to say. Life's a tune today, Brentocast all the way. Family stories roll, laughs and heart on roll.
Man, we are back for episode number 63 of Brentocast. It's been almost exactly a month. I'm pretty excited because I have been experimenting with new formats for the shows, and today is going to be one of those formats, a virtual guest, if you will. You might think you've heard me together with this guy in the past years and years and years ago, but that's not actually the case. But in any case, I'd like to welcome to the show a virtual Mr. Magic. Mr. Magic.
I'm happy to be here. First off, thank you for sharing your Brentocast platform with me. I realize it's been probably 4 years now since we've been on a podcast together. And I've got some things I want to get off my chest.
By all means, sir, go right ahead.
First off, I want to send out a blanket apology to everyone I've offended or wronged in any way during my time trying to make MVP work. I also want to especially apologize to you, Johnny Brento, since you were the one most often in the co-pilot seat and literally funded the majority of our projects out of your own pocket. So I'm here to say I'm sorry and to just try to explain myself a little bit.
I never thought I would see this day.
I appreciate that, but it's not enough to just say sorry. I need to acknowledge what precisely I'm sorry for. I'm done making excuses for my bad behavior, but in the interest of including the entire picture, I'd like to establish that when the group started, it was an entirely different dynamic.
Yep.
Over time, things evolved, and I admit that I didn't handle that well. At first, it was you, Gio, and I riding 8 hours in a pickup truck, figuring out how we were going to create a feature-length film with no money.
Yep.
You know, I was going to be the writer, the director, the final say on basically everything, and you guys were all stoked to handle your own individual pieces of that puzzle, that collaborative puzzle of making a movie. George was going to be the cinematographer, the editor. Megatod was going to handle the special effects, and you, of course, were going to be the editor.
Right.
We discussed everything and everybody's ideas. That was kind of what that trip was, really.
Yep.
Was us all saying, hey, what if we did this? What if we did that? And then sort of poking holes in our own ideas for what we could potentially pull off. But, you know, during the 6 years of trying to create that movie, we all slipped into a groove, and that didn't change for a really long time. Nobody really had any issues with me kind of, you know, picking the dates we were going to shoot. You know, the contacts in Ashburn were mine.
Right.
Coffee shop contact was mine.
Yep.
And, you know, I just sort of fell into this being the general director. And that worked out great for a while. And nobody seemed to really, you know, want to assert leadership. So, you know, I led by default. And I got used to that. I fell into that role. And I'm not going to lie, it definitely fed my ego a little bit.
Okay, I got you. Well, I mean, everything you laid out pretty much is the way it happened, as far as, at least from my point of view.
And given this a lot of thought, I think that during those formative years while we were all young men, you know, going into our individual careers after college, we didn't all approach that in the most traditional way. Of course, Johnny Brento, you went the most traditional route, getting a high-paying job in Charlotte, commuting like, you know, a regular 9-to-5er, and, you know, you had a wife and started having kids, and typical American, you know, route for a young man to take. And
Yep.
Gio and I had slightly different, you know, paths, both work wise and relationship wise. And ultimately, you know, I turned out to be the only real bachelor in the group. And that probably led to me having a lot more time to put on the intellectual part of trying to create all the content and, you know, the scripts and various projects that we did as MVP. And it maybe didn't occur to me what a time suck some of that stuff was. So, you know, thank you for your input and taking those times that you really could have been with your family and, you know, hanging out all night in the woods with me and Gio and Megatod to, you know, try to create something. I think we had some good times. It pains me to look back at how my attitude was at times, but, you know, you live, you learn, you grow some maturity, and you kind of move to a different place with your respect for other people and your empathy. And I know I certainly have.
Right. Well, me as well. I mean, of course, you look back at those times and you think, I'm doing the best I can do. I'm maybe a little stretched for time, but I'm going to get up here this weekend. I'm going to give this 12 hours or maybe 24 hours. And it was a lot of fun. Before things kind of seemed to get a little more strained between all of us, I count those as some of the most exciting creative days of my life, even if the end product wasn't up to what I hoped it would be. The experiences themselves were pretty good. I was essentially in awe of your storytelling abilities, and I wanted to seek to improve myself. And so every time that you would mention a book that you had read, I would kind of get that same book and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, that was definitely a really cool time, and I want to believe more good times than bad. I don't think the bad part of that came until a bit later, at least from my perspective.
I say I was the only bachelor, but of course that's leaving out, not accounting for Megatod. I think he is a bachelor, but he's also something else.
True, true,
He's
very
kind
true.
of an alien genius
Yep.
at what it is that he does, but only working within the construct of his own idea of what a project is. Is that fair?
Yeah, totally fair. Todd is a 501 Blues original, man. There's only one Megatod, no doubt about it.
So everything was kind of cruising along, and this idealized version of MVP that was rolling just the way I imagined it would, until we got hit with the fact that the movie we'd spent so much time on wasn't going to be something that we could distribute because high definition video came, the aspect ratio came, and there was this huge struggle of trying to quantify the value of all the work that not just you guys had done, but you got to keep in mind I was the guy that talked everyone else into doing it. All the actors, all the locations, everybody that contributed time or any kind of support, that all came from me having to kind of talk things up. Oh, it's going to be this great thing, a Blair Witch Project, blah, blah, blah. Cinema Verite, all these little tricks and angles that I thought I could take. And I guess because I was in such a insular community of filmmakers where literally other people were copying our ideas, this kind of gave me a sense of false success. That hey, I was this creative uh, force of script writing and ideas, and all along I know that you guys contributed to those ideas with me, and looking back now, I could see how you guys might feel like I didn't give you the proper credit that was due. um, I'm very sorry about that for sure, but things are cruising along, and then all of a sudden here comes Respawner, a project that you did, ostensibly as just a little practice project on a Saturday
Yep.
with Sylvia Burris.
Right, right.
And the first I heard about it was how our actors wanted to go be in Respawner. A lot of people took it as a teaser for a new feature length film that we were doing. And, my thought was, I haven't written anything, but what is this? And I know that led to one of our blow ups on your porch where I,
Yep.
to my shame, cursed you out for dividing our forces. And particularly distasteful was the fact that you had just spent like all day and part of the evening editing on C for Chaos with me, and you fed me twice, and then I literally stood on your porch and tried to put you in your place, and gaslit you very hard, and I am truly sorry for that.
Well, it's certainly nice to hear you say that, and yeah, you're lucky I didn't slap the shit out of you. No, all things. It's a joke, man. It's a joke. But in my neighborhood, people get dealt with for things like that. Actually, I think that's one of your lines from the Zombie Hunter, if I'm not mistaken.
So while I may have been a little bit rude or slightly manipulative to actors that I felt like I had to kind of keep in line to have that access to that talent that we didn't have to pay for, I think potentially I did you more poorly than anyone else. Not intentionally, but just because we were closer and working together more often, Johnny Brento.
Yep.
You've always been such an integral part of MVP, not just financially, but creatively. Your contributions have been, well, significant, and I absolutely couldn't have done any of it without you. Instead of recognizing you and giving you the kudos that you actually deserved, I allowed my own feelings of losing control envy, perhaps, of the family situation and the job situation. You were having this great career. So, of course, that, that made me feel inadequate at times. And people get depressed. I'm an artist. Artists get depressed. And when I get depressed, potentially, I guess I was taking that out on other people.
Right, right.
You were the closest target, so
Yep.
you got more than your fair share of that. I started really taking you for granted, valuing your work, um, making it seem like you weren't a driving force behind our project. When the truth is, none of our completed projects would exist without you. In Respawner, I chose to be your cameraman, probably on a subconscious level, to sort of tank that project. And I was pissy and, just a little bit, I guess, ill while we were doing that. Of course, it was a super hot project and we were in a 115-degree warehouse with no AC, but I could have been nicer about all that.
All right.
Mainly, I could have been more competent with my camera work, and I know that I took shortcuts right there. When I knew things were too dark, I would shoot it anyway, and then I, leave it up to you to deal with an edit. And these are just like competencies that I was only kind of coming into anyway.
Gotcha.
Then there was, of course, Buddy Row, which once again I was the cameraman on, and I kind of gave you some resistance from behind on that project, and it actually turned out pretty cool. A lot of people seem to like it, but I did resent that. Anytime that your projects that you wrote and or directed got any kind of kudos or appreciation, I took that personally. I don't know why, but I definitely did.
Well, I mean, things did change a lot. The paradigm of MVP definitely shifted. I mean, really starting with Tales when, Gio and I did our projects, and, Todd didn't really want to write one, so he didn't have one. But, the dynamic definitely changed, and I recognize that. I could see how that would be a bit of a topsy-turvy time, if you sort of, the expectation was for you to be the only writer and the rest of us come up writing scripts. I could see how that would be a little challenging.
And it wasn't just our working relationship in MVP. I mean, I would say, if you fast travel back in time 5 years, we were still friends. We would do things like go and see movies together. We would shoot our little reviews of the movies for the various MVP channels of content. And I treated you like a friend in those times, and vice versa. And it's just kind of sad that I let the mismanagement of the working relationship sort of tank that. After you had walked away from MVP, we should have been able to get along fine. I mean, I certainly used that as a pretext for kind of blocking you on Twitter and things like that when you weren't going to go the same way I did politically. And on that note, I do regret trying to give you the impression that I was politically and religiously aligned with you when I knew that I wasn't. I mean, the less said about that, the better, probably.
Okay.
As it turns out, my guy was a complete disaster. I don't know if your guy would have been better, but I know my guy was terrible.
He was.
Another thing on a personal note was when I introduced you to BJJ, and you were able to get so good so fast at that hobby or discipline. It ticked me off a little bit. I was able to kind of handle you on the mat for a very, very short time, maybe like 4 or 5 weeks, until you learned the basics, and then you just exceeded me. I mean, obviously you're a lot bigger too, but then you went on to win all the competitions, and I never was able to really make an impact competition wise. Anybody with an ego likes to get their hand raised, no doubt about it.
True.
But I guess if I'm being real about that, I didn't come to roll very often. And the one thing about jiu-jitsu is, like, you got to spend the time on the mat, have any sort of flow. And it was just easy for me to just kind of walk away from that and act like it didn't matter to me.
Well, I definitely, I have to acknowledge that I would have never been, even involved in jiu-jitsu if it wasn't for you introducing me to it. That time we were at the karate class that I taught down in Norwood, and I realized that just with the little skills that you had at jiu-jitsu, that karate was no counter for that, and that ultimately jiu-jitsu actually did change my life in a lot of ways. So I really got to thank you for that.
Back in the day, in the MVP years, one of the things that I never really acknowledged was you were pretty magnanimous about the financial contributions. Obviously, you made a lot more money than Geo
Right.
and Megatod and I. And as a result, you ended up putting in more money than we did. And that was something I was completely oblivious at the time. I mean, it meant less than nothing to me. I just wanted to get all the funds I could get. And in the name of pushing it forward and total do now, whatever we can do now, it doesn't matter where that money comes from. And I just wanted to acknowledge that, thinking back on the project where things fell apart, we were about to do another project, Schrodinger's cat. You spent like $1,000 getting that awesome demon mask and hands for that. And, it was my project that I wrote, that I was directing. I should have felt like amazingly emboldened and just so hyped by those products, because it was going to enable us to have a very smooth production where we could potentially do it inside of COVID without having everybody in the room at the same time. And also we couldn't be kind of waylaid by Megatod, taking too long or whatever to create whatever he created for the special makeup. And, instead of that, that was a time that I was getting really wound up about your support of Trump. And I didn't like when you posted Biden memes, and of course, confirmation bias kicked in, and I ultimately used that as a pretext to block you, and ironically said that I'd rather be friends with you than work with you. And then, of course, after the political stuff moved on, you did, offer an olive branch a couple times. I think you may have invited me to the movies a few times, and I basically just rebuffed those invites by saying, oh, well, I'm not able to do it, I'm working or whatever. And then, fast forward years later, we really, between then and now, haven't spoke. And, this is like a dedicated effort to kill a friendship, if there ever was a friendship in the first place. And, now I could see why you might think that there never really was a friendship. But, this is where we are. And I just want to acknowledge that, I've made mistakes.
Man, what can I say, dude? It's amazing to hear that from you. I think that I've always remained open to the friendship surviving. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to work with you anymore, and it's okay that we don't have the same political opinion or religious opinions. I went on having friendships with some of my more mature friends that were certainly left aligned, and then other friendships just absolutely disintegrated with the advent of the Biden administration. What can I say? It's really cathartic for me to hear this. And, even though you aren't the real guy, even though you are really just a AI generated placebo of a partner apologizing to me, saying the words that I'm never going to hear from the real human, it feels good to hear it. And it's easy to... it would be just as easy to accept apology from the real man, Magic, but you are doing a great job of just passing along the sentiment that my ears needed to hear, to sort of let that whole episode go. And I do get a little bit nostalgic every now and then, not so much for the human, but for the sensation of having our little community represented in such a cool way on the reviews and the podcasts and things of that nature. And, I'm sure that the human being that you represent is still doing creative things, and that's great. I'm wishing him well, but having been blocked, I don't go a long way in trying to see what he's up to. I wish him well, and that's going to have to be enough. And, no matter what he thinks about me, which he may still think I'm, a Trump tard or an alt-righter or whatever it is that we're supposed to be. But for the here and the now, I accept this apology that never came, and I would be happy to move on in any way with the real individual, or lacking that with you, Mr. Virtual Magic. So I'll just put this invitation out to you right now. I mean, how would you feel about coming on the Brentocast and doing a regular film review discussion with me when films that I really feel passionately about come up? What would you think of that idea?
Dude, I would be absolutely thrilled to do that. I think that could be a whole lot of fun.
Consider it done, man. I'll put some thought into how we could bring you back, and it'll just be good old Johnny B and Mr. Virtual Magic back in the chair of the MVP mothership, baby. First off, we had to find a good movie to talk about. That's a little getting harder and harder to do these days. But that's going to be a good spot to end it, as we're coming into that 20-minute to 22-minute mark that I like to keep these podcasts at. And to all the listeners out there, thank you guys so much. And hopefully we'll be back with another Brentocast very soon.
Wake up, hit play. Hear what Brent gon' say. Life's a tune today. Brentocast all the way. Family stories roll. Laughs and heart on roll. Brent's life on a stroll. Tune and feel the soul. Brentocast, Brentocast. Life in every blast. Brentocast, Brentocast. Fun and joy so fast. Music's in the air. Family moments share. Brent and loved ones there. Podcast everywhere. Brentocast, Brentocast. Life in every blast. Brentocast, Brentocast. Fun and joy so fast. Music's in the air, family moments share. Brent and loved ones there, podcast everywhere.